All right, welcome to this episode of Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and today I want to talk a little bit about referability. And you might say, what is referability? Well, look, in the mortgage industry and real estate, everyone talks about building your business based on referrals. And I think there's a lot to talk about, and I'm going to do a future episode really talking about ways that you can orchestrate getting more referrals, whether it be from the referral partners that you work with, whether it be from your past clients or even your friends or family. I think there's a lot of things that you can do to be very intentional about growing your business through referrals. But here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't think about is, what are you doing in your business practice, the way that you conduct yourself, to increase the likelihood of actually being referred? Because it's my belief that there's some things that you can do that will increase your level of referability. Okay, so we could talk about the tactics to orchestrate more referrals, but if you're not referable, then all of those are going to be a waste of time. So what do I mean by referability? Well, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I reached out to a friend of mine because I needed to have some work done on my gate. I got a gate at my house and it hasn't been working. And I had seen on social media, on his Facebook page, that he recently had a gate installed. I'm like, well, that looks like his gate works and my gate doesn't work. So I'm going to reach out to him and see if I can get a referral, right? This is what we do. We'd like to hear from someone that we know and trust about the experience that they had with someone else. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, what's the name of your gate guy? I got some problems with my gate and I just need someone to help me troubleshoot it. And he said, well, I can give you the guy's name and number, but this isn't a referral. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the deal? Well, his craftsmanship wasn't that great. And, there were just some other things. So I'm happy to give you his name and number and you can talk to him for yourself, but it's just don't consider this an endorsement, on my part. And I'm like, ew, that's just like, that's got to be like cringeworthy, right? Can you imagine if someone asks for a referral of a real estate agent or a mortgage person and you can say, well, I'll give you the name of the guy that did my loan, but, don't take my word that he's great. There couldn't be any worse of a referral, because here's the deal. I'm probably not even going to call this guy. I'm going to look for another referral from someone else. But even if I did call him, the whole time I'm thinking, is this guy really going to follow through? I'm going to be questioning everything that he says, so on and so forth, because it just didn't come with that strong endorsement. So that's one example I'll give you. But I don't want to talk just about mortgage and real estate. Let's use an example that maybe we can relate to. And I could give you an example of a dentist office. I can give you an example of a contractor. But let's use the example of a contractor, because I've had a few bad experiences with contractors in the past. So let me paint for you a picture. Like, let's say that you want to have some work done around your home. You want to have a new deck built. Maybe you want to do an addition. Maybe, whatever it may be, you got some work to do around the house. And look, contractors, they do not come all in one size or flavor. Like, they're all over the place, right? But if you reached out to a contractor and they showed up and they had, a nice truck, nothing crazy, nothing like not like this big lifted, F-350, but, a modest, work truck with their name clearly presented on the side. So as they pulled up to your home, there was no question about who was pulling up. You're like, oh, this is the contractor that I reached out to. And then, they were professionally dressed, not in a suit or anything, right? They're contractors, but, they presented themselves well, and they came up to your home, and before they came inside, they took their shoes off, or they brought with them maybe some boot covers to go over their shoes to make sure they didn't track things into your home. And when they sat down with you, they listened, and they they asked for your feedback and input, and they consulted you on what you were looking to do, and maybe even suggested that, hey, I know it'd be great to do that project that way, but man, there's probably a less expensive way that we could do that for you and still accomplish what you're trying to do, right? So instead of trying to upsell you, they're actually giving you great advice. And then, when they leave and they tell you they're going to get you a quote, they actually, follow through, and maybe it's quicker than you thought. Instead of being tomorrow, it was that afternoon, or they said, I'll get it to you next week. And it showed up on Friday before the weekend so you could have time to sit and review it with your wife or whomever else, right? And then as they came back to do the job, they still represented themselves well. Maybe the subcontractors they worked with also conducted themselves very professionally, and they did the job at or below budget. And they, every night when they were done working, they cleaned up their tools and they cleaned up their workspace. And you could just tell that this is a contractor who has a process in which they follow every time. It's no surprise that he drives a modest truck that's clean, that has his logo on it, very clear, so that when he's at your house, there's no question about, is this some random guy here, or is this someone who, is here to do a job for me? It's no surprise that he was prepared and he covered his boots before he walked in your house out of respect for your home. That just tells you how and what he expects from his employees as well, and all the way through. You get my point. But look, guys, those of us in mortgage and real estate, there is so many people who don't think about whether or not how they conduct themselves is a referable experience. Because here's the bottom line. Using that contractor as an example, it's not just, did he build the deck, right? And it didn't fall apart. Did he do a good job on the remodel? A lot of people probably do a good job. But when you refer somebody to somebody else, what you're doing is you're referring an experience. And this is where I think a lot of people miss it. You think that you're referring, like in the mortgage case, you're just referring an interest rate. Like, I got a great rate. You should call this guy. He's going to get you a great rate. People don't refer an interest rate. People don't refer a job that got done okay. What they refer is an experience. Just like when someone says, what was your favorite place to go on vacation? You're like, oh my gosh, there was this one resort. If you ever have a chance to go there, you gotta go. It's unbelievable. Usually when that's someone's response and they're that eager to refer something, it's because the experience that they had when they did it. So what I mean by referability is, are you creating an experience for your client every time they interact with you? Because if you are, then when your client is done doing business with you and they have a friend, a family, a coworker, or someone else who needs home financing or needs a real estate professional, they're going to think back and say, is my friend or family member going to get the same experience that I did? They might not get the same interest rate. I mean, the market could be completely different at the time. Maybe one's purchasing and one's refinancing. Maybe one's doing a construction loan and the other one's doing a reverse mortgage. Maybe one's buying their dream second home or their home on the lake, and the other person's buying a manufactured home as their first property. The list goes on of differences. So it's not about the loan they're going to get. It's the experience. And so here's some things that I think that as a loan officer in particular and a real estate agent, but really I'll speak as a loan officer because that's what I did for so many years, that I think that you could do to be more referable. The first thing is, how do you look? You don't have to wear a suit jacket and a button-up shirt. That's the look that I, have always done. I grew up doing mortgages from the time I was very young, and I decided that, looking professional, like a banker, was an important part of what I did. But I'll tell you what I don't do is I don't show up looking different everywhere that I go. And that's what can create referability. So maybe you're a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. That's fine, or gal, right? Maybe you're more casual in your appearance. I would argue that we're helping someone with one of the largest financial transactions of their life, and it doesn't hurt to dress up and look professional, but that's just my opinion. To each their own, but be consistent, because consistency is what is going to increase your level of referability. So whatever you like to wear in your professional environment, show up that way every time. Because here's what you don't want is, let's say I do a loan for a client and I show up wearing a suit. And maybe they're a business professional as well. Maybe they're an attorney, and they really, they respect the fact that I show up, in a very professional environment, professional look and whatnot. But let's say they refer me to one of their other attorneys, and then I show up to that meeting and I'm wearing flip-flops and a hoodie and a baseball cap. That's a very different experience, and maybe that person goes back to the original referring person and says, well, Tony was a nice guy, but he's kind of casual. I said, what do you mean? He didn't wear a suit? No, he was wearing a baseball cap and a hoodie. That's fine. I'm not judging what you're wearing, but now all of a sudden, the likelihood of that person referring you again just went down substantially. Why? Because they were referring an experience that they had with you, and now they realize it's possible that you're going to show up differently than the experience they had. And your level of referability goes down drastically when the person referred you and the feedback they got was different than what they experienced with you. The likelihood of you getting another referral, I'm not saying it won't ever happen. I'm just saying it goes down drastically. Here's another example. I've talked a lot about this on this podcast, is what is the initial conversation that you have with your borrower? Just like I explained the contractor, how he came in and he went through, kind of a needs assessment. What are you doing with your clients? I will tell you this, that when I get a referral from someone over the last 25 years, the initial conversation that I have with that borrower is literally the exact same conversation every single time. Now, obviously, the way they answer the questions is different, and the conclusions of that conversation leads us to, different products or programs or advice that I might give them. But the way that I conduct that conversation is literally exactly the same conversation every time, starting with who referred you to me, and then an edification of that person. They remember that. And so it starts there. And if you haven't watched my episode where I talk about that initial conversation, I suggest that you do that. But that conversation, making it the same every time, is absolutely a key component to increasing your referability. Because I will tell you one thing I would never do is take an initial conversation from a client with, my kids screaming in the background, or with, outside next to some really loud construction where it's a very difficult conversation or whatnot. I always make sure that I get back to them and find time where I can have this very professional, consultative conversation with a new client. And I think that in and of itself does a lot to increase your referability. And there's lots of things that you can do throughout the loan process that create an experience. So think about this, the updates. I know a lot of people, every Tuesday, they do an update to their clients that are in process. Every Friday, they're doing an update to all their borrowers that are pre-qualified. It's those sorts of things that create consistency in your business. Maybe on every time an appraisal comes in, you call your borrower to let them know it's in and go over the details of it. Maybe every time a loan approval comes in, you make it that's the time that you reach out. It's these little things. I'm not telling you what to do in the loan process. I'm suggesting that you think about creating an experience that's duplicatable. It's going to make your life a lot easier, by the way, when you run your business this way. Not only are you going to know exactly the role that you play in the loan process, you're creating an experience that someone can refer, because they may like you, but if you show up different, you talk different, you look different, and it's not the same, man, your referability goes way down. And the last thing that I'll mention is, one of the things that we like to do is build relationships with people. And whether this be with, your referral partner. So if you're a loan officer with your real estate agents, this is classic with real estate agents. I see this happen a lot. But even with your clients, we get to know them and we start to feel comfortable with them. And what are the things that you do when you're with your friends and you're comfortable? Well, you might let your guard down and you might talk about things that are a little bit off color, right? You might tell a joke that, with someone you're super comfortable with, it's pretty funny and you're going to have a laugh. But there might be someone else that you wouldn't tell that joke in front of because it might be offensive or off-putting to them. It might change their perspective of who they think that you are as a person. And some people say, Tony, you know what? I don't care about all that crap. I'm just me. I just do me. And I tell whatever jokes I want, and I don't care who's in the room. That's cool. You can certainly do that. Just know that you're reducing your referability. Doesn't mean you won't get referrals. Doesn't mean you won't be successful. You're just lowering the chances that you might get referred. So I would argue that you should stay away from anything that is controversial. I would not talk about politics with either my referral partners or with my borrowers. I just wouldn't do it. I don't tell jokes that are off color. I don't get into situations where I might be out for a happy hour and I'm having too many drinks, or I'm, getting into a place where I'm acting unprofessional. Those are just not things that I would recommend doing ever with someone that you're hoping to get referrals from. And especially if you're newer in the business and you're trying to grow your business, you don't have the luxury of your reputation preceding you. If you've been a great loan officer for 20 years and you want to be a little more loose with how you conduct yourself, hey, you got a good practice, you got a good business, you're happy with your income, you're okay if your referability goes down, because it will. I don't care who you are. It will take a hit. Less people will be willing to tell other people about you if they're uncertain about the experience that person's going to have. Look, getting referrals is tough enough already. Convincing someone, people don't like to refer people. They really don't, And the reason they don't is because if anything goes wrong, it's a poor reflection on them. So anything you can do to increase your referability, I encourage you to do, but stay away from off-color jokes. And here's the trap. Here's what happens. You get to know I'll use realtor as an example, because I've had some realtors like this. And you get to know them, and you realize that maybe it's political. Maybe they lean a certain way, and you lean a certain way, and then you guys can reminisce about that. It doesn't matter which way it is. Or maybe you know that they like some off-color jokes because maybe they post on Facebook some jokes, and you're like, well, gosh, if they're going to put it on Facebook, they're going to love this one I just heard. So you go about and you cross that line, and you let your guard down. And here's what happens. They don't get offended. They matter of fact, might like you even more. But here's the problem, is that realtor might have 5 different clients that they come across over the next month. And maybe one they know is, a very conservative type of individual because they make it clear. They go to their house and there's a Trump flag out front or something. Well, if you've been talking about how you hate those kind of people and they're not going to refer you. So your referability just went down. Or it could happen vice versa, right? I mean, it works both ways. Or maybe it's someone that they know is very religious and is not going to take kindly to an off-color joke. But because you've been willing to share an off-color joke with them from time to time, they go, well, gosh, I really like Tony, but I don't know. He doesn't know this person like I know. And gosh, if he were to, tell that same joke he told me to them because he let his guard down, that's going to reflect poorly on me. And maybe they don't refer you to that person. And then maybe one of the 5 people, they're going to like, you know what, this guy's going to love Tony. They have the same beliefs about this, that, or the other thing. They love, these kind of jokes. Now you get referred to one person, but the other 4 you missed out on because that realtor decided that the personality of that borrower may not fit with you because you are now kind of pigeonholed into being this type of individual. And that's what I mean by referability. You want to be, you don't want people to necessarily know all of your personal beliefs about things. We all have them, but when you're looking to grow your business and be referable, you don't want to be pigeonholed. You don't want to be categorized as someone who thinks a certain way or likes certain things or whatnot. And again, I've told this to people like, well, Tony, I'm an individual. Like, you're asking me not to be me. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not asking you to be you around your friends, around your family, around who you want to be. But in the business world, when you're looking for referrals, I'm going to suggest that you want to be a blank canvas. You want to be everything to everybody. You want to be referable. And this is something that I would ask you to think about. So hopefully this resonates with you. I think a lot of people know this stuff, and some people tend to forget it. So I would ask you to take inventory of your process. I would ask you to think about, how do you show up? Is it the same every time? Because if it's not, and someone doesn't know how you're going to show up when they refer you, all these little things chip away at your referability. Doesn't mean you won't get any referrals, but it means you're going to get less than you otherwise could have. Now, you couple increasing your referability with a really structured approach to creating referral moments and being intentional about asking for referrals. You put those two things together, and you got a winning business. So we'll talk more about that in a future episode. I hope this was helpful. I would appreciate any feedback that you might have. If you disagree with me, put it in the comments. Let's have a conversation about referability, being an individual, what it means to each of you. This is my take on it, and it served me very well. And I'd love to hear your feedback. And until next time, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. And more than that, letting people in our industry know that Market Shares exists. And we're here sharing market updates and tactical information that you can take into your business every day. See you next time. Bye for now.